Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Mary Johnson from the North Castle Public Library in Armonk, New York. A former colleague from the Mamaroneck, Lilly, is also here. This is a joint program from the North Castle and the Mamaroneck Libraries, and I want to thank Book Yaya and Lone Michel very much for having these wonderful authors. And we are going to be meeting Bruce Cameron and Cathryn Michon and Delone. Thank you very much again, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Mary. I am so thrilled to be here tonight. Thanks to the Armonk Public Library, the Mamaroneck Public Library, and my husband, Dan Freed, who created Book Yaya. But mostly, I am thrilled because we get to celebrate the book of two people whom I love. I know this is Bruce Cameron's book, but it's also Cathryn Michon is a huge part of it. I feel I can say that, right, Bruce? I would love to tell you about the glorious people of Cathryn Michon and W. Bruce Cameron. Cathryn Michon is a screenwriter, along with her husband, author W. Bruce Cameron, on all the films made from Cameron's novels, including Amblin Universal's films A Dog's Purpose and A Dog's Journey, and Sony Pictures' A Dog's Way Home. She is currently writing the screenplay for A Dog's Promise for Amblin Universal. She is also a film director. Cathryn produced, directed, and co-wrote the Lionsgate film Cook Off, in which she also starred alongside Melissa McCarthy, Ben Falcone, and Wendy McClellan-Covey. Cathryn also co-wrote and directed the film Muffin Top, A Love Story, in which she stars with David Arquette and Marissa Jarrett Winokur. Cathryn is a former member of Chicago's Second City, a stand-up comic, and the author of the nationally best-selling feminist memoir, fabulous book, The Girl's Genius Guide to Life. W. Bruce Cameron is the award-winning #1 New York Times and #1 USA Today best-selling author of 28 books, including the A Dog's Purpose series, A Dog's Way Home, The Dogs of Christmas, and the Kirkus Award-nominated Repo Madness series, among many others. In all, with upwards of 14 million books in print, Bruce is the top-selling author of dog books globally, translated into more than 50 languages and published in 31 foreign countries. A Dog's Purpose, A Dog's Journey, and A Dog's Way Home are now major motion pictures with Sony. Please help me welcome Bruce and Cathryn here to celebrate his latest book. Thank y'all so much for being with us tonight. I'll let y'all take it away.
So fun to be here, and what an intro.
I know, I feel like, I wish I knew those people. Yeah, that's so cool.
Much more interesting than I am, actually. And I'm really looking forward to this because we haven't had an opportunity to chat over the past year.
No, we've had no one else to talk to.
We haven't seen each other. So this will be great to get caught up.
I think we start off just by the main reason that we're here is to talk about show the book. This is Bruce's.
She's the director. I'm the talent.
This is Bruce's newest book, A Dog's Courage, which just popped on Tuesday.
May 4th. Came out May 4th. It's the sequel to A Dog's Way Home, which was made into a movie, as you said earlier.
Yeah, and I think I do love this book. The best thing about it, I think, is that first of all, I will plot spoil and say no, the dog does not die. The dog does not die. I know that's an issue for some people. People have sweatshirts that say, I'll watch any movie as long as the dog doesn't die. The dog doesn't die. So that I will plot. But there's so much adventure, so much challenge in having written this book. And I, for one, told him that he couldn't do it. I said, you couldn't write a sequel to A Dog's Way Home. And I think, as often happens with husbands and wives, he decided that he would prove me wrong. Do you want to give him a hint on how you managed to do a story about a dog who got lost and then came home? And then what happened?
Well, it made perfect sense to me the dog would get lost again. No, I'm really partial to the Rocky Mountains. I've spent a lot of time there. I lived in the foothills for about 15 years. And just as is true out here in Los Angeles, the Rocky Mountains have a real problem with fire, periodic conflagrations that are devastating to wherever they hit. And I started thinking about what it would be like for a dog to be separated in a fire, which can happen in the panic of a evacuation. You can lose track of your dog. And what would happen then to our dog Bella if she got separated from Lucas and Olivia and had to find her way back home yet again, or at least find her way to her people, which to a dog, the people are home. I don't think the dogs are totally okay with a house. They think of it as their home, but only because their people are there. And every time we have moved with our dog Tucker, Tucker has immediately adapted to the new place. We'll walk by the old place. He doesn't pull to go in there. He knows he doesn't live there anymore because his people don't live there.
Yeah, that's home.
And you're like, I just realized, so she's like the moderator. This is her show.
Wow.
So thanks for having me.
Oh, it's so great to have you. It's so great to see you again.
Who have been some of the other guests that you've had?
I've really only had you for a year. And
Okay.
what is it, 4 months now? A year and 4 months?
Who's counting?
Yeah, something like that. It's been amazing. What is I can't
Okay,
read.
so do you want, so I will jump in with a question.
Yes,
Cathryn,
please.
thank you for that wonderful cue to me to be able to do that. Mary Johnson has a question. Are y'all also going to film this book? And who will you get to play the kittens? I'm surprised you've been bringing up the kittens, frankly, Mary, but
no.
go ahead.
I don't mind plot spoiling that a bit, because one of the favorite characters in A Dog's Way Home is Big Kitten. Bella in the first book is kind of raised by a cat. Like, it's one of those interspecies adoptions. So she loves cats. She's a dog who loves cats. And then when she's lost in the wilderness, she meets a cougar kitten. But even as a kitten, Bella notes that it's a big kitten. And that becomes her name for that character. And they do get reunited in the wilderness in this book as well. Only now Big Kitten has big kittens of her own.
She's got two little kittens, two little cubs. And, as these things go for Bella, it's going to become Bella's responsibility to help these kittens survive. And that drives, frankly, for me, drives a lot of the tension, because it's not just about a dog.
Yeah.
It's about these two helpless.
Well, it's ironic that it came out just before Mother's Day, because it really is about all the various ways that mothering can happen. I'm a stepmom, which isn't, like a regular mom.
That's almost interspecial.
It's almost interspecial. But I think it's a celebration of mothering is kind of what you choose to make it, or how that energy comes about. But to answer the question, in the first film, and it will be the same in a subsequent film, is Big Kitten is actually zeros and ones. She's actually special effects 100%.
Oh, wow.
You can't actually
Do a cougar.
work with a cougar. They are
Yeah.
not super trainable.
Yeah.
Well, even a tame cougar, I wouldn't want to put a dog and a cougar together in a scene where they had to be that close to each other. The thing about making a live action movie with any animal, but I know mostly about dogs, is it requires a whole team that are focused just on the welfare of the dog. And it's difficult and expensive. And our producer, Gavin Pallone, has made it abundantly clear that even animals that get along famously, like dogs and cats, when they're raised together, he will not let them be on screen at the same time. So every time you see in one of our
Like
movies,
in A Dog's Purpose, there's a scene where the dog is a puppy and there's a cat in the house, and the cat's like, like what cats do, right? That's a visual effect. Those were green screen composited together. They were shot at 2 separate times. It's funny.
That's great.
It's funny to see
great.
the cat's piece of it, because they have like something with a feather or something on it, right?
Yeah.
The cat is like, just playing. She's not mad at all, but it's really fun to see how they put it together that way.
That's lovely that he was so rigorous with
He's rigorous.
the level. Yeah. And that makes sense for him. But I love that was, because I can imagine that there are some sets that are following protocol, but maybe not to that really high standard.
Yeah, he's the most, he's why we wanted, he's an old friend of mine. I knew him before I even knew Bruce, and he's a longtime animal
Yeah.
advocate.
Yes,
And
he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, that's the guy that should make me.
Oh, that's great that you brought him to the
Yeah,
Cathryn.
it's a funny story. Actually, I sent him, well, it was still a manuscript. And he's a very tender-hearted person. He acts tough, but he's very tender.
Yeah.
And I sent it to him, and I said,
Sent A Dog's Purpose.
A Dog's Purpose, yeah.
Yeah.
I sent it to him. I said, I think you're going to want to make this movie. And he texted me back, and he's like, I'm on page 22. I'm out. I can't. Because it's a little rough in the beginning of A Dog's Purpose, because it's a dog who reincarnates and remembers all of his life, and was about to have one of those reincarnations. And I said, I'm just begging you. Could you just read to like page 28? If you just read to page 28, I think you're going to want to make the movie. And then about an hour later, he texted me back and said, oh, we're so making this movie.
Oh, that's great. That's a great story. That is a fabulous story. So that was the first one that he produced with y'all.
Yes.
Great.
Yes, that was the first one.
Oh, that's great. I'm kind of surprised it took him so long, to be honest with you.
Oh,
Right?
it took a long
Right? I mean,
time.
come on, considering how many books Bruce has done and how long, I mean, I've known Gavin.
Hollywood is a glacial
Yes, it is.
environment until it's not.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, it's beautiful that you made it happen, but that's a great story. I don't want to be pushy, but I do think that the story of how all of Bruce's books started is a pretty great story. If y'all felt like talking about Bruce's journey,
Yeah, it's very
with right,
inspiring. Or it's
I think it's
either inspiring or
inspiring.
discouraging. Which is,
Yeah,
it's
both.
like I don't know anyone who has more of a I don't quit attitude than Bruce.
Yeah, I never wanted to live in Hollywood. I never wanted to live in Los Angeles. I came out here because I had written a book called 8 Simple Rules for Dating My Teenage Daughter.
That's right.
And through a whole series of fortunate events, it became a TV series starring John Ritter. And of course, John passed. And that really disrupted the whole career arc of Bruce Cameron. And obviously it was a tragedy that he passed, and that's the important part. But then I had other humor books that I had written, and they were in development, and everything was going great. And then there was a writer's strike, a bunch of stuff happened. And then at one point, we were really struggling and trying to figure out what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What's our next move? And we were doing pitches and going to the meetings and drinking bottled water. And then, but I had by this time I had met with and teamed up with this woman in more than one way, one might say. And I was getting pretty serious about her romantically. And we decided to go visit her parents, which, at our age is a big deal. So we're in the car and we're trying desperately to think of reasons why we can't go. And then,
or as my dad said at that time, he actually said this on the eve of our wedding. He said, after all, you're no spring chicken.
Oh, thanks, Dad. Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
So, but Cathryn, just to give a little of her backstory, she had never had dogs growing up, which I did. I grew up with dogs constantly. So she had only had one dog in her life, and as an adult, and the dog passed prematurely, unexpectedly, and devastated her. Just broke her heart, as it does. We all know that, right? But this was her first time at the rodeo, and as far as she was concerned, it was never going to happen again. And she turned to me, and she said, "I will never have another dog." And this came out of nowhere.
Wow.
And now I'm thinking, well, now this whole trip's a waste because this is a deal breaker for me. I mean, I'm looking for a gas station to drop her off because I'm just like, I can't go through life without a dog.
And wait, now how long had y'all been together at this point, Bruce?
Not very long.
Not very long. Okay.
No.
Like a year and a half.
Yeah.
A year and a half. Yeah.
2 years. I mean,
Yeah.
in old people time, it wasn't very long.
Right. So
Stop. You are hysterical. We should all look like you in old people time. You're incredible. Okay. So you're like, okay, this is it. This is a deal breaker.
Yeah. So when I'm trying to make a point about something, an important point, I often will make up a story to illustrate that point. And that's just what I do. I'm a storyteller. And I decided to tell her a story that would convince her that the same love that she'd had with her dog was available to her in another dog if she just opened her heart. And the way I came to it was to tell her a story about a dog who reincarnates and therefore remembers each life, and after a while learns skills that enables this dog to make his way back to his original boy, who's now an old man, and to save that man from the fate that he has found himself stuck in. And I told her the whole story from beginning to end, all the lives, all the events that happened. And at the end, she just had
sobbing.
She had tears in her eyes, and she said,
Yeah.
she said, that's got to be a book. You've got to write that as a book. And so it hadn't occurred to me to write a dog book. I never thought of myself as being a dog book author.
Wait,
but now I
Bruce.
certainly do.
And Bruce, I'm going to be rude and jump in. But so the story that you told, and you are a natural storyteller in many ways, obviously that's clear. How much of that story were you making up as you told it? How much of it was one that you had already?
Great question.
Yeah, I love that question because the answer is a little astounding to me.
Yeah.
When I write a story, I start with thought bubbles and ideas, and I write down this, and then it's like I always say it's like a rat running a maze. I'll run down until I get stuck, and then I'll go back to the last time the story made sense and try a different direction. And so it's like making a recipe that you read in the newspaper. It's always just adding a taste of this and saying that didn't work and throwing everything out and starting over again. So in this particular case, though, this book came to me as if I were streaming it, as if it just downloaded. I had every nuance, I had every character, I had every voice, all there, right there in front of me.
It was remarkable. And it was like, somebody who does like a one-man show.
Right.
He just kept telling
Channeling.
him that people had names and like he was telling the story. And it was so remarkable to me because I don't write things that way either. And I said what I said, that it's got to be a book. But then I said, I'm really worried that it was so perfect. And, we're just driving up the 101. And I'm so worried that we'll forget it. Or I think because this is like literally pre-iPhones. And he had like a recording stick that he would always carry to make notes about things. I said, I think you should record it because it's so good. Like, it's so good. And they did. And I mean, it took him like an hour and a half to tell the story.
Wow. So wait, I have another question. So wait, Bruce, as you're telling the story, was it growing as you told it? Were you surprised at some of the things, or were you relaying to her what you had already had in your head? Sorry,
it did not feel like I was making it up. It felt to me like
but
like
exactly, channeling. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you
like
were
I was
surprised too.
remembering something that had happened.
Which has not
That's
happened before.
beautiful.
No.
It's not happened ever.
It's the only book I've ever had.
And of course, then he tells it again for another hour and a half, and then I'm crying again. I'm like, I don't want to hear anything more about that thing. You got it now. Go write the book, and then we'll talk.
But I'll note it worked because Tucker here, who's
Tucker,
he's not the most lively of our talk show guests on show, but
He's doing
Tucker
great.
is the result of this understanding that Cathryn had that she can't go through life without a dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. But this is a great story. So you recorded it on your stick, and then
And then she said, I don't want to hear this again until you're handing me a manuscript. And back then my writing, I changed my writing. I changed my approach every time I write a book. Every time I write a book, it's a completely different deal. The book I'm writing now is so different than the one that I wrote last time. So different than this one. My methodology is evolving. I think it keeps getting better. I'm getting faster. My books used to take me 2 years, and now I can write a full length book in about 9 months. But that particular book, I remember sort of how awkward it was to like listen to the recorder and then stop and then have to type it. And so it was kind of a dirty process, but we got there.
that's interesting. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then we sold it, by the way. I just wanted to say, we sold it. And then they had to have the first draft, the first working day after Christmas. So we spent Was that our honeymoon?
Yeah,
So
well,
it was,
allegedly. Yeah.
so we spent it writing. We were just writing. That was all we did. And then we turn it in, and then 7 years later, it's in the theaters.
Wow. But that was the theaters, but the book itself, the way it got published, I think Cathryn told me
Okay, that is a good story.
That's a great story.
So,
Cathryn, you want to take this one?
I'll tell. Here's what it is. This book was written before The Art of Racing in the Rain had come out, which is also told from the point of view of a dog, very different book. But that book had not come out, and everyone in publishing is like everyone in Hollywood. They wanted to wait and see. Was that going to be? Did people want that? It sat unpublished for 2 years. It was the only time his agent has ever said, "Listen, I never say this to anybody, but this is going to sell. Get ready for an auction. This is going to sell." 2 years go by, nothing. And we were actually going to self-publish it. And then it turned out that a new employee at this publisher was handed a pile of manuscripts that she was to send back, rejected manuscripts that she was to send back to agents. And the top thing on the cover was A Dog's Purpose. She's like, "Oh, I like that title." And then she took it home and read it. And what she didn't know is that when you're a new employee, shouldn't go to the head of the company and say, "I think we should buy this book that you rejected." No, didn't do that. But she did, and we're so grateful. And then Linda Quinton, who is our publisher, is such a great leader that she said, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to read this book and then I'll explain to you why we rejected it." I mean, I don't personally remember. I'm not the one that read it, but I'll go ahead and explain to you why we're not going to publish this one. Then she read it, and then she said, "You are right. We are going to publish this book."
That's such a great story. That is
Which
a
is fun,
fabulous story.
I mean, this was so fun.
So then you get a phone call literally out of the blue after 2 years.
Out of
the blue.
Yeah, we were on the bike path, and my phone rang, and it was my agent, which I thought was highly unusual, unless he was calling to fire me, and he said, "Were you really on Oprah?" And I said, "Yeah." "And were you really on Good Morning America?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Okay, I'll call you back." And Cathryn says, "We're going to get an offer on something." And I said, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm going to be indicted. I don't know." But then he called back, and we had an offer, and it was less money than I had made on a book in a long time, but it lit the fuse. I mean, it changed my whole life. Now I'm the dog book guy.
That's so great. That is a great story. That's a really, really beautiful story. Yeah.
But I will say regarding this book, Dog's Courage. First of all, this dog on the cover is Shelby, who's the star of the movie A Dog's Way Home. So and we rescued her, so that's fun. But one of the things that he has changed, he was talking about how his process has changed. I think you do a lot more research than you used to do. But you might want to talk about how the research on this one went in kind of an unusual.
We would love that. We would love that.
When I write a book and I stage it someplace other than in my living room where I've been for 18 months or whatever it's been, when I'm out in the world, what I really like to do is experience that place. So I wrote a book called Emery's Gift, and it's set in Idaho. And I went up to Idaho and learned, much to my shock, that the Selkirk Mountains are completely different than the Rocky Mountains. And I would never have known that if I had just said, "I know about the mountains. I used to live in the mountains." So I went up to the Selkirk Mountains, and I saw the river, and I sort of tasted the air and experienced that part of the country. And it was completely different than what I had known. And I thought, I have to always do this. And even though I've been to Colorado, I wanted to go back to Colorado in the time period when this is taking place, which is the spring or summer, and it's fire season. And I wanted to be back there just to sort of like know the area again, learn it, listen to the birds, feel the wind. It's just so important when I'm writing a book to get the location exactly right. And we got in the car because it was COVID.
But this is in COVID, yeah.
Yeah,
so we couldn't fly.
Oh, wow, right.
We got in the car, and our first day, we're just driving as far as Las Vegas, so that shouldn't be so long, except for on the way, this 18-wheeler bursts into flames, And so we're
no.
sitting there, we're about 20, 40 yards maybe from the burning truck, and all these cars, it's like, you know, typical drivers in America, they pull right up to the fire and stop. So, and I'm looking at that, I'm thinking, well, if that fire comes this way, it's going to catch those pickups on,
Right,
and then that
right,
fire is going to be coming this way. So
Now we're doing more research than we wanted
Yeah.
to.
And I'm looking at the surrounding, the surrounding is all this mesquite. And I thought this could go up in a second. And I said, Cathryn, we've got to plan how we're going to get out of here, since we're locked in with cars on all sides. We got to plan what we're going to do. And then of course that gave us a lot to talk about, because it's like, are we going to run, you know, back to LA? I don't know what our plan was.
We didn't have one.
But eventually the fire department showed up, put out the truck. We got to go to Vegas, we get in very late, we get up the next day. That was uneventful the next day, right? But it was the day after.
Days after.
We got to Colorado, and there was this big fire that was causing
My
all
God.
kinds of transportation issues.
By the way, called the Cameron Fire.
Yeah, it was.
No
And
way,
I-
no way.
It had nothing to do with us. We didn't start it. We didn't have, we did.
I
we're
saw
not involved.
that as a sign that I
A
was on the
sign.
right track.
Yeah, that is great. That's great. And so odd with the fire on the way there also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We tasted it. I mean, it's really interesting how different
But
the
I mean,
air
that
is.
wasn't, we didn't go to Colorado like.
Right,
hoping
for
to
a
be
fire, yeah.
You know, I
Right.
mean, but it just really, and I do think it affected the book, obviously. I mean,
Sure.
Yeah.
you know, I think it made a big difference. And that's one of the things I love about the book is, you know, because the dog is telling you about a fire, right?
Yeah,
And dogs experience the world much more through scent
sure.
than sight. And so I think Bruce being able to taste and smell this conflagration really changed the way the book is. I think the way Bella then describes this catastrophic event is so much more vibrant and real, because
Absolutely. It is really amazing that y'all encountered two fires like that on the way to research that book. I mean, what are the
Yeah.
odds?
Yeah,
That's
what are the odds? And it
crazy.
was a little spooky. I mean, and that, you know, there had been fires here that
Sure.
spring, so we had also kind of experienced it here, but the difference in the mountains,
different.
and how the
Absolutely.
smoke hangs in the sky, and
And what's
all-
burning? What's burning?
Yeah, and what's burning, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess I would say that A Dog's Courage is kind of the biggest adventure book that I've ever written, because it really is about survival during a fire, a dog trying to protect two cougar cubs, and also find her way back to Lucas and Olivia, who since we met them last have gotten married, and he's a resident now, so he's a doctor, and she's going to be a veterinarian, and they're camping together, which is what they're doing up in the mountains when the fire hits. And it really, there's a lot of action. It's a good book for Father's Day, in my opinion, because if you've got
And
a
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day too, it's got so much heart. But if you've got a father and he doesn't read that many books,
Yeah.
because he wants a lot of action and that
Oh,
sort of
there's a
thing.
lot of action.
It's a lot of action.
Yeah.
It's quite a thrill, right? It's fun
Was
because it's
that-
just pubbed on Tuesday, and you know, reader reviews are starting to go up, and people, it is definitely one of those I stayed up all night reads. Like it really is like a roller coaster once you get on it.
Absolutely. That's so exciting. Did you enjoy? And there are people asking if you will read from the book, Bruce, but while you're in this little stretch, I just want you to finish up talking about the level of action in this book as a parent. Was that fun for you? Were there times when it felt daunting? Did you feel like you were on that path with, you know, them and being kind of pushed by the adventure as well? Or were you, do you know what I'm saying? Because
I
sometimes
do
you
know what
just-
you're saying, and it's funny. The dirty secret of my career is that I wrote 9 unpublished
I don't
novels.
think it's a dirty secret.
Okay, well, it's not pleasant. It wasn't pleasant to live through. I wrote 9 books that have never been published and never will be published, because I was trying to write thrillers, and I was trying to write action books, and so I was really able to develop a skill, a muscle in that. But then I wind up writing a humor book about having teenage daughters, and that's the first one that got
Well,
published.
that's a
Right.
thriller, isn't it?
And that,
Yeah.
that's a
Cathryn.
That'll keep you up at night. I guarantee
Every
you.
night. Yeah.
You've got a 16-year-old out past curfew, and you're
Oh,
not
honey. Oh, honey.
Yeah,
People wonder why I say, and when my second son was born, I was so happy it was another boy.
Oh, God, yes. Yes. God bless that.
Yes, God
That's
bless
lucky.
mothers of daughters. But yeah, I love that, Bruce, that you had that skill of writing 9 action novels. And to me, that makes you more of a heroic writer than
I think this is the kind of book you like to read.
Yeah, I would pick this
absolutely.
one up. Yeah.
So it sounds like it was really fun for you to be able to use that muscle, because you're right, it is a muscle, just like the comedy that you have is a muscle.
Yeah, but I'm one of those annoying people who finds writing to be really fun. I really look forward to it. In fact, I have trouble doing anything else. If I've got a book going, I want to just keep writing. I don't want to stop. I don't want to work out. I don't want to eat. I just want to be in the novel. I get so frustrated that my brain starts to go fuzzy on me because I'm so engaged.
That's beautiful.
So this one, especially because of all the danger, the human interaction with the dog, telling stories from a dog's point of view is a challenging thing to do. Especially, I loved how you were characterizing the novel as this dog doesn't have a grasp of what's going on in the world, doesn't really understand, when people are evacuating, the dog doesn't know why.
But she senses the fear and she smells the smoke. And so her take on it is very micro. But I also think part of it is that she's an empath, like, all dogs are really. And so she, there's a town that gets evacuated and she smells the fear and the sadness and what the people are going through.
Yeah, there's a scene that I love. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a scene that I love where after the big fire, there is a huge drenching downpour, and it sets up a town at the base of a mountain that's been completely blackened by fire for a mudslide, and the people are evacuating this town, and you can taste the fear that they feel in that moment, because at any second the whole side of the mountain could collapse.
Yeah.
And Bella doesn't know what's going on. She knows
she knows it's bad.
She
knows
can
I'm bad.
tell that things are bad, and she doesn't understand why people don't stop and give her something to eat. They're just like they're bent on getting out of town.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
So should we have Bruce read, or are there a lot of questions?
Is that okay? That would be great. How about and I'm just, because we have this little break where we're asking if you'll read, I will go ahead and quick ask questions that came in, because I have a feeling that after you read, Bruce, there'll be questions from that. So we will just quickly. Rose has a question and then wants to say something sweet to y'all. Her question is, just curious, what is the key demographic in your dog book series? And she also says, it's awesome to see how well you work together. I think many spouses are at each other's throats and do not do well as business partners. Speaking from personal experience, laugh out loud. That's from Rose. Okay, so
well, I'll do the thing about how we didn't kill each other in COVID any other time prior. We actually went to a therapist to get some help in how to create our business relationship separate of our personal relationship. And she gave us a lot of just really nuts and bolts tools and rules that we agreed to. And I think it has made a huge difference, because it is a lot of pressure to, have a marriage and then also be business partners, but a lot of couples do it,
But when you have an equal partnership, like as I learned in business class, if you're an equal partner and you have an absolute disagreement, the only way to resolve the disagreement is to dissolve the partnership, because if you're not going to change your mind and she's not going to change her mind, so what are we going to do? And so we had to.
It's a simple rule. It's a simple example. We've made movies from his IP. We've made movies from my IP. If it's my IP, I get the
intellectual. That means intellectual property.
Oh, sorry. Yes, intellectual property. If it's from my writing or my book or my stand-up or whatever, then I get the final word in the creative dispute.
Right.
And then he gets the final word when it's his. So, I mean, that's simple. It sounds simple, but if you didn't make that decision beforehand, and then you get to that,
That crucial point.
inflection point, it could be tragic. So
That's right.
And you might as well, she might as well tell you about the demographic, because she spends more time in that arena than I do.
Well, yes, I'm deeply involved in marketing. It's interesting. A lot of it's coming from both ends. Grandmas are so amazing for us because they want to have a family read, so they'll lend a book to their daughter, who will then, have the kids read it, or they read it together. But since Bruce has also been publishing children's books, and we have a partnership also with Scholastic, so he's in all the book fairs and all the books are, and so like sometimes we're getting kids recommending the children's book they've read, and then they get the adult book that's related to it, and they read it as a family. So it's really fun how, because of the nature of what he writes, it really the whole family can share this particular oeuvre, if you will.
Yeah, well, that's the sweet spot. That's beautiful that y'all captured that. Yeah.
And then there are people that like dogs, as it turns out.
Right. Right. Yeah, as it turns
Dogs are
out.
popular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's fabulous. I want to ask about the children's books also, but I'm feeling piggy that I'm keeping y'all from Bruce from you reading, because a number of people have said, please, will you read? So,
Okay.
which I agree with. So Bruce, will you read a bit, and then we can ask you how you jumped into the children's books. What was that like for y'all? Yes, I am including Cathryn in that question. And then I know there'll be even more questions from that. So.
All right, you've got my dog excited because I'm going to be reading from a dog. Courage.
Yay, Tucker.
I'll tell you that I've been doing my own audio books lately. Cathryn has been directing me in the booth, and so I may I haven't done a reading since I started doing audiobooks. We'll see. It may sound really phony.
No.
Well, you're funny. Well, all right. Now that you said that, there is a question. How come there are two different audiobook recordings for A Dog's Purpose? And someone says she didn't know that. Is one better than the other?
I think we're going forward. He read a couple of his books. He read Emery's Gift, and he read How to Remodel a Man, and I kind of started to regret that he wasn't reading them because he's so great at it. So we decided, we just did Cooper's Story, which is a children's book, but we decided that going forward, he's going to read them. And then we might actually go back and get a couple of the biggest books and have him read them too, because I don't know about you, but I
want the author.
love to hear it by the author.
Absolutely. You want the author, especially with Bruce's ability to deliver. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's great, Cathryn.
Imagine if we had Harper Lee reading To Kill a Mockingbird and you could hear that. That would be quite an experience.
Exactly.
But we just heard.
And I'm no Harper Lee.
Well,
that sounded terrible.
We just heard Dylan Thomas reading, like there was a rare recording of him reading, and it's so beautiful.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Was it Under Milkwood? Was it that recording?
No, I can't. It's gone out of my mind, but it's
really special. Yeah. Well, good. Bruce, you're yet another way that you're lucky to have Cathryn in your life, that she's seeing this missed opportunity and she's giving this gift to the world of you going back and recording your books, because people do want that. You're right.
Yeah.
All right, putting you on the spot. Do you know what scene you're going to read? This is exciting. It just came out on Tuesday.
Yeah. So as is true of all sequels, there's a little bit in the first part of the book that sort of catches you up to speed if you've forgotten or never read the first one. You have to find out who Lucas is. That's the original boy to Bella. You have to find out who Olivia is, his new wife. And get some background on some other characters and some other things. And then so that's what happens the first few chapters. And I thought, well, I think it'd be more interesting to sort of pull you in what the flavor, the meat of the book is, which is when the fire begins to make its presence known to everyone. So what has happened, I'll set the scene. Lucas and Olivia have been camping with Bella. They've seen animals, and Bella has done some reflecting about her relationship with that cougar big kitten that she knew in A Dog's Way Home, because she's up in the mountains, and she's remembering when she had to live in the mountains and make her way back home to Lucas. So they have spent the night in what Bella calls the soft room, which is their tent. And during the night, Bella smelled smoke. And so where we're going to pick this up now is that Lucas and Olivia have decided that the prudent thing to do is to get in the car and get out of there, because they can smell smoke, and they can see a very strange orange cloud, which is what you get when you've got a Rocky Mountain fire. With the smoke, it looks like a regular cloud, but it's got an orange tint because it's reflecting the fire beneath it.
Wow.
So it's an eerie and
Wow.
yeah, and oddly powerful apparition. So upon seeing that and smelling the smoke, they've decided that they're leaving, and we're going to pick this up there. Now, this is told from the point of view of the dog, so it's Bella narrating. So that's who's talking. Lucas put everything back into the Jeep, and I sat in the back seat as we slowly ascended a steep, rutted road, swaying and jouncing. Olivia's window was down, but I didn't thrust my nose forward in the space between the seat and the door because the smoke made it unpleasant. The smell was much stronger than it had been when the sun was rising. I hoped at the end of this car ride, we'd be in a place where the air wasn't heavy with the sooty scent of burning wood. Eventually, Lucas cranked a tight turn and then sped up, heading downhill. "It's getting worse," he told Olivia. "Roll up your window, would you?" I registered without disappointment as Olivia's window slipped up and seated itself with a squeak. On the other side of the glass, the tree-filled hill rose sharply on Olivia's side, while on my boy's side, it plummeted nearly straight down. The wind continued to punish the swaying branches. I could feel a gnawing anxiety growing in both of them. Olivia reached her hand out and touched Lucas's neck, but I took no comfort from the gesture because she was so tense. "We're going to be okay though, right?" she asked. "Lucas?" He gave her a pensive look. "The problem is we don't know where the fire even is. And with this wind, it could be heading right toward us and we wouldn't even know it. I'm glad we left when we did." So this is where I'm supposed to say, "My wife was right." "Again," Olivia corrected. "Your wife was right again." "Yeah, I am glad we left when we did. The smoke is getting thicker by the minute. For all we know, we're driving right toward it." "Do you think we should turn around then?" Olivia pressed worriedly. "Maybe. Can you look on your phone and see where the road takes us back in that direction?" She pulled out her phone and began touching it fondly. "Well, that's not helpful. I can't pull up maps. I don't have a signal either. No bars." I glanced at her. I knew what "no barks" meant, but did not know why she would be saying it now. I sneezed, which did nothing to clear the tickle from my nose. Lucas coughed. I've got it on recirculating, but it's still getting pretty bad in here." He reached forward and touched something, and the air began blowing loudly from the dashboard. Olivia shivered. "I feel like the wind is trying to push us off the road." Her hand reached up and grabbed a handle above her. "There's that scenic turnout not far from here, remember? We'll get out there and see what we can tell about where the danger is, okay?" Olivia nodded. "Sounds good. Maybe I'll be able to get a signal from up there too." "We're going to be fine, honey." Olivia reached out and touched a tender hand to my boy's neck again. He slowed for a tight bend in the road. "Lucas!" Olivia screamed. Lucas slammed the Jeep to a stop so abruptly that I nearly toppled from the seat. We had found the fire. In front of us, all the trees were burning, flames roaring loudly up into the blackened sky. As we watched, a tree crashed across the road, sparks dashing off with the wind as it smashed into the pavement. The smell was overwhelming. "The trees are burning on both sides of the road." Olivia's voice crackled with dread. An awful terror poured from Lucas as he backed up, swung the Jeep around, and raced back up the way we had just come, the engine roaring loudly. My God. Olivia's eyes were wide and horrified. The whole world was on fire back there. Did you see how fast it was moving? No, I mean, I just saw flames everywhere. Lucas, what do we do if the fire's in front of us too? Lucas glanced at her, then grimly turned his attention back to the road. We were swaying into the turns, and outside the windows, the trees were flying past in a blur, shaking their limbs at us. I was too agitated to lie down, so I just stared out the front, the smoke so strong in my nose that my eyes were tearing up. I panted with agitation. I wanted to go home, to have a tiny piece of cheese, to lie in bed with Lucas and Olivia and have everything be normal, to be gone from this scary place. Whoa, Lucas shouted. A car came flashing around the corner, its horn blowing, and Lucas veered to avoid it, his wheels crunching on gravel, the Jeep sliding. I was flung up against the door. My boy wrestled with the wheel and we skidded to a halt, sideways on the road. He nearly hit us. Are you okay? Yes, but where's he going? That way is the fire. Olivia reached over the seat and I licked her hand. You okay, Bella? He'll find out soon enough, Lucas replied grimly. We started moving again, still headed uphill. We just need to find a place out of the smoke, see what's going on. I don't understand how we can go from a normal July day to a forest fire so quickly, Olivia fretted. There was no warning. It's the high winds. They can make a tiny fire huge and push it at speeds over 20 miles an hour. It's so nice to be married to a man who watches the Weather Channel, she replied. Lucas grinned at her. Then I felt the Jeep slow. Olivia gasped. Up ahead of us, more trees were burning. The fire was a wall, and it was coming straight at us fast. Lucas twisted in his seat, staring behind us as he backed up, the engine whining tightly, while all around us the trees seemed to explode, columns of smoke and fire blasting out toward us. I barked, hating the fire. Olivia was weeping. Oh God, Lucas, we're trapped. Hang on. The Jeep yawed to one side as he spun the wheel, and then we were going forward again. We just came from here, Olivia protested wildly. This way is the fire. I know. Lucas stopped the vehicle and we all sagged forward. He gave Olivia an intense look. Okay, get in the back seat. Put Bella in her harness. He leapt out onto the road and ran to the back and started pulling things out of the Jeep. Instantly, the choking smoke was much worse. Olivia twisted in her seat uncertainly to watch Lucas gathering items from the back. What are we doing? See that lake down there? If we can get to it, we should be safe. There's an island maybe 50 yards out with no trees, nothing to burn, surrounded by water. What? We can't drive down there. There's no road. There's not even a trail. It's too steep. It's the side of a mountain. Lucas came back around carrying something. I whined. I did not want to be locked in the Jeep with Olivia. I wanted us to all be together. The fire all around us made me want to press up against my boy, to climb in his lap and be held. He opened his door. Here's her harness. I think this whole area could be engulfed any second, so we don't have much time. I know it's really steep and rocky, but there's no other way to go. We've got to get to the lake, and if we try it on foot, we're not going to make it. The fire's coming too fast. Okay, Olivia said, I trust you. He left his door open and returned to the back of the Jeep. Olivia scooted her seat forward and climbed over it and slid in next to me. I licked her face, but was not wagging because she held my harness. I did not like the harness due to the fact that it kept me from roaming freely in the back seat, cinched into place by the belts. She buckled me into it while Lucas took the flattened pad we usually slept on in the soft-sided room and shoved it into the space between me and the back of the front seats. A familiar motor buzz started up. Within seconds, the flat pad began growing, pushing at us. Olivia pushed back on it. Air mattress? Airbags out, remember? This should help cushion the two of you. It's going to be a rough ride. Take the doors off, Olivia responded. Lucas stopped, looking at her questioningly. We don't know how deep the lake is. If we sink, we're going to want to be able to get out, she explained. Lucas nodded and was soon wrenching at the Jeep's soft doors, setting them down at the side of the road. The sleeping pad kept growing. I think it's inflated enough, Olivia called to Lucas over the top. The sound of the motor ceased. Lucas jumped in the open door and clicked his belt in place and looked over at us. I love you, Olivia. I love you too, Lucas. They stared at each other a moment, and the fear was so strong I panted with it. Then Lucas said, hold on to Bella.
Okay, well, that was utterly terrifying. That was terrifying. That was one of those experiences. I was listening to you and I'm like on the edge of my seat. Wait, no, you're taking off the doors. Do you need to? Yes, you do. I'm so glad I'm not in that situation.
I know, I feel the same way. It's very tense. I mean,
Very tense. How did you think? I mean, how did you? I don't mean to interrupt you, Cathryn. I'm so sorry.
no.
Okay, but so with that situation, how did you even come up with that solution? I wouldn't have even figured out that.
That
right?
I will answer
Thank
that.
you, Cathryn. Yay.
Because here's why. This is something actually so marvelous about my husband. He likes to do contingency disaster planning. He enjoys it. And he has, we would literally be sitting at dinner of an evening and he would say, if we were on the Titanic, what I would have us do is we would go down to the galley, because in those days they cooked with lard. And we would get naked and cover our bodies in lard, and we would wrap ourselves in aluminum foil, which they did have at that time. And then, even if we didn't get on a lifeboat, it would help protect us so that we would get hypothermia.
Yeah,
Also,
and you'd be reflective.
Lard flotation.
Lard floats.
But he sits and thinks about stuff like that.
Oh, that's brilliant. This is a helpful husband, Cathryn.
It's helpful. So I feel like if
Yeah.
that happened, Steve would have a good plan.
Or don't get on the Titanic. I mean,
Don't get on the Titanic. There's the other option.
I would be like,
Wow.
honey, the Titanic, I remember something about that. This time machine is still left me with little memory. So
Yeah. Oh, that was an amazing passage that you read. Yeah, I think we all now have to rush and finish reading the book tonight to see what happened. But that was utterly edge of the seat and terrifying in the best possible combination way,
And it is so interesting that it's being told to you by the dog, who's like, I don't want to have a belt around me. I can't.
I know. I know, and I love the soft room. Yeah,
The soft room.
Yeah, so sweet,
Yeah.
Bella. Yeah, that was fabulous.
Thank you.
Yeah, are there any questions that anybody wants to jump in while I ask? I would still love to backtrack a bit to talk about the children's books, which I know many of us here love, because I can imagine, maybe I'm wrong, but I have a feeling that at some point in your life, you didn't see yourself as possibly writing children's books. So this might have been a surprise, obviously wonderful, but a surprising part of your journey as a writer. So I know we'd all love to hear what that was like for you when you started that and what that is now, because I would also imagine that it is informing your adult books in an interesting way that you might not have realized possibly when you started that journey.
I came up with the idea of writing a book called Ellie's Story. It had a lot to do with the fact that the dog Ellie in A Dog's Purpose, one of the lives that Bailey has as a dog, is this search and rescue dog named Ellie. And it makes for a really easily self-contained adventure story. And I thought children would really like it. And I have had many adults tell me, just like Gavin Palone's reaction to A Dog's Purpose, the book's too intense. They'll say, I've got a 9-year-old and she can't make her way through your book. It's too scary and too intense. So for a lot of reasons, I decided to write Ellie's story to take advantage of this wonderful dog that especially in the movie, I didn't feel like we gave Ellie, I think we gave her like 75 seconds worth of screen time that just didn't tell this wonderful story. And I wrote Ellie's story and it won awards. I never thought I was going to win any awards. I didn't know that how popular this would be. And so naturally, the publisher was like, what else are we going to do? And so I started writing what we call the puppy tales, which, Bailey's story, Molly's story, Toby's story, a lot of them are based on the experiences that are described in each of my dog books. I just sort of take a dog from those books and I adapt them to children. And then others are complete standalones. This dog, Shelby, is a real dog who Cathryn and I and some other people flew down to Nashville and drove out into the wilds of rural Tennessee to meet this dog who had been living in a junkyard when she was rescued. And she was diseased and had parasites and was yet, despite the fact that she'd been apparently abandoned to live in a landfill, she was the sweetest dog. She's so intelligent. And I still get to hang out with her. She came over to visit us.
Yeah, we actually shot a commercial for Target for this book that shows on the wall of TVs in Target. And yeah, and
That's so
so
sweet.
we shot it with Shelby and Tucker.
Yes.
Was that
was so-
Tucker's first time on
Well,
camera?
you know, she's a movie star. So
Well, there you
reaching
go.
a little
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, you're going to get your heart broken, Tucker. I love the story so much. I wrote a book called Shelby's Story, which isn't based on any movie. It's just the story of Shelby. And I've got some other ones coming up that are not part of any series that I've written. I kind of like doing that better now that I've sort of gotten into this more.
Yeah.
And I do have a whole series of even younger children books, and it is called the Lilly to the Rescue series. Lilly is this very special dog who is rescued and then comes to live with a girl named Maggie Rose, who's in 3rd grade, and Maggie Rose's parents, one of whom is a veterinarian who owns an animal rescue. And the other is her father, who's a game warden in Golden, Colorado. And so Lilly is constantly being put in a position where she can help rescue baby animals, usually by accident. She usually isn't really aware that she's rescuing an animal.
She's one of those, and in fact, Bruce's daughter runs a rescue in Denver, and she's a Denver cop. That's her job, but she runs a rescue. And there are some animals that are even more of an empath than most dogs are, and so they she has had this one dog who was so gentle. She was a mastiff. She was huge, but she was so gentle and so empathetic that, like, if there was a feral cat, they would put the dog in the room with the cat, and the dog would actually calm the cat down.
It's amazing, Cathryn.
It's kind of amazing.
God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Especially if you could see how big this dog is. It'd be like putting a rhinoceros in a bed. I would be like, I'm not calm. This is a big dog.
Wow.
Beautiful.
That's so beautiful.
So that idea is kind of, so that's how Lilly is. She just, loves every little baby animal that comes along, and so she gets involved. Yeah.
And so then the takeaway on all this, though, is that I never thought I'd write children's books. As we recall, my 9 failed attempts to write thrillers were all based on this idea that I was going to entertain adults. But since I've started writing these books, I've had parents and teachers and librarians especially tell me that they say, I've got a kid who is a reluctant reader. She does not want to read books, but she'll read your books because the way in is through the eyes of a dog. And that is not only a unique perspective, but it doesn't require anything but imagination. It doesn't require any kind of identification, and I've often thought, I remember growing up and there'd be a book about a boy wanted to be a baseball player. And I'd be like, well, I don't want to be a baseball player. So I'm having trouble identifying with it.
Bruce, right.
This isn't even about gender. This is just about dogs.
That's so great. That is such a gift to children. I wasn't even thinking that. And you're so right about as I've suggested books to he's 14 now, but he has dyslexia, so I still read to him, which is a lovely joy.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right that if I say, he's like, well, I'm not into that. So that's out for that book. Like, it's not even
right.
So you're so right. That's so beautiful that the dog becomes obviously the character for the child, and they have so many similar traits in terms of having a different understanding of the world, of the adult world, than adults do. And honestly, I can't think of any greater gift to give.
Oh, you are
gift of reading.
so right.
God bless you.
I really feel like I've discovered my purpose as an author, and to my surprise, it's teaching children to love to read.
That, Bruce, that is, I don't know what better point to end this on.
Nothing better.
There is a last question I'm going to ask, because I don't want to be that terrible person who leaves someone hanging, but I do just want to really take a moment and say that is what you have found, and what you're giving children and families in the world is truly world changing. And the journey that I feel like y'all did such a beautiful job of letting us see of how you got there is such a gorgeous example of, combination of following your heart and also trusting those amazing coincidences that keep happening. I mean, if you look at where you came from, your show with John Ritter to now, it's just a gorgeous journey. And now you're helping so many people. So, y'all are amazing. Okay. Last question. Tell us about Dutch. Also a wonderful point to end on. How did you choose a Bernese mountain dog?
So what's really interesting about Dutch is that he shows up in A Dog's Way Home. And at that point, I just knew about Berners because I had met some, and I loved the idea of seeing a Bernese mountain dog tromping around in the snow. Since then, my son has adopted a Bernese, and so I've gotten to know them even better, and they're just wonderful. They're goofy, and they're gentle, and they're so much fun. So Dutch. By the way, I'll give a little bit of a plot spoil. Dutch does reappear in Shelby's life when Shelby is lost. Bella, when Bella is lost.
You get confused between the actor and the character.
When Bella gets lost again, we're going to run into Dutch again, and that whole turn of events is one of my favorite in the book A Dog's Courage.
That's so beautiful.
In terms of the Berners, though, I think it's so fun that, and then especially when we make the movie, they are mountain dogs, and so to have that dog in scenes with Shelby playing Bella, almost teaching her how to be a snow dog, because Tennessee isn't a snow place.
Not at all.
I think the first time Shelby saw snow was in Canada,
she didn't want to have anything to do with
it. Yeah.
So that dog really was kind of like her snow coach,
Oh, that's so sweet. That is so
well, in
sweet.
fact, Shelby, we rescued a different dog named Amber, who looks very similar to Shelby.
Yes.
And Amber loves snow. So when it came to a live action snow scene, Shelby was back in her trailer with like heated blankets, and Amber was just scampering around in the snow. And Shelby was like the close-up dog. Shelby's so beautiful, and she's got these different looks that she can give to the camera. Amber was more of the stunt dog.
Y'all are hysterical. That is great.
I thought the whole relationship between Shelby and Amber was very Betty and Joan. I mean,
Cathryn, you are hysterical.
When one of them was on camera and the other one was in her crate watching, there was a lot of, I could do that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Okay, Cathryn, you need to write that. That is brilliant. That's so good. What a complete treat this has been. I'm being a good person and ending it only 5 minutes after the hour, though we could all sit here for 12 more getting to visit.
Oh, Donnie, it's such a pleasure.
Are you kidding? Thank you for the gift of your time.
Can I just say also, because I've known you such a long time, and you've always, when you were doing spoken interludes in Los Angeles and you were highlighting writers and all of that, it just feels like what you do in terms of allowing writers to present literature or conversation about literature is so rare and so wonderful, and I really thank you for doing it.
Wow, that's sweet.
It's just such a great thing for people who love books.
Thank you. That's very dear. And I personally, as Cathryn said, I've known Cathryn since I think 95 or 96. We go happily way back when we were 12. We met in middle school. And thank you. And Bruce, I knew kind of adjacent. And that's what this feels like, the best gift is that I get to, keep celebrating y'all's work and have y'all in my life and get to share y'all with more people and hear about the beautiful things you're doing. So thank you so much for taking time during this very special week. The publication,
it's a treat.
your new book. Yeah. And we look forward to celebrating the next one. And everyone go rush to their local bookseller, online, in store, wherever in
It's
your
everywhere
library.
you can buy a book.
And get it and tell your friends and write reviews and spread the good
Oh,
word.
I will give a shout out to an indie if I might.
Please.
If you want a signed, personalized edition of this book, our beloved book Soup in West Hollywood
Oh, good. Absolutely.
Bruce is going to be going there next Wednesday. So if you order by the end of day Pacific time Tuesday from booksoup.com, you can get a signed personalized book and help a bookseller who has, like all indie booksellers, it has not been fun.
That's
but
right.
They survived and we love them. And so if you feel like, you don't mind paying the shipping, go ahead and order from Books.
Cathryn, thank you.
Yeah.
And as Bruce said, what a great Father's Day present signed to your dad from Bruce. And I will say, what a nice Mother's Day gift for your mother to open a card that says, in a week or so, you will receive a signed copy of Bruce Cameron's new book.
Something very special is coming,
Very,
Mom.
very
it's not that I
special
forgot.
and personal. Yes. Yeah. Actually, that's even better because now you don't have to rush to the mall tomorrow. So you're set. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. And I put the website in the group chat so everybody can find
Oh,
it.
perfect.
We
love those guys. I know you love them too.
That matters. Yes, that matters. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mamaroneck Library. Thank you, Armonk Library. And mostly thank you all who joined us tonight to celebrate Bruce and Cathryn and their beautiful new book. I'm sending y'all so much love and gratitude. Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.